1. Groucho Marks and T.S. Eliot, a poet and a comedian. Walk into a library. Who would think a funny man who made silly jokes would become pen pals with a serious poet? But that's what happened with Groucho Marks and T.S. Eliot in the 1960s. Eliot really liked the Marx Brothers movies and asked Groucho for a picture. Being a joker, Groucho sent him a photo without his shirt on. They wrote many letters to each other filled with jokes and smart talk about books. People who liked either man were confused by this friendship. When they finally met in person in London in 1964, Groucho talked about cigars, while Eliot made clever but quiet jokes. Later, Groucho said Eliot's poems were so hard to understand that they reminded him of math class. But under all the jokes, they truly respected each other. Eliot thought Groucho was a genius with his joke timing, and Groucho liked that Eliot didn't act all high and mighty like most famous poets. Their friendship showed that being funny and being smart aren't opposites. They're just different ways of being clever. 2. Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald, The Bombshell and the Songbird. Back when black performers couldn't play at fancy places because of skin color, Marilyn Monroe did something really brave. In 1955, she called the owner of the Mocambo nightclub in Hollywood and promised to sit in the front row every night if they let jazz singer Ella Fitzgerald perform there. The club said yes. This helped Ella's career take off in a big way. Marilyn didn't do this just to get attention. She truly loved Ella's amazing voice and strong spirit. These two women from completely different backgrounds became real friends. Ella later said, "I really owe Marilyn Monroe. She opened the door for me." While most people only cared about how pretty Marilyn was and didn't think she was smart, she was quietly helping fight unfair treatment of black people. The two stayed friends for years, though magazines didn't write much about it. Marilyn never asked for credit, and Ella never forgot her kindness. In a time when most Hollywood friendships were fake, theirs was built on standing together, being brave, and real respect. A movie star and a jazz queen side by side, not for the cameras, but for what was right. 3. Shirley Temple and J. Edgar Hoover, The Starlet and the Spy Chief. One of the weirdest friendships in old Hollywood was between child star Shirley Temple and the powerful and secretive FBI boss J. Edgar Hoover. At first look, it seems strange or even a bit scary, but it was real. Hoover really liked Temple's sweet, innocent image and began sending her birthday cards every year when she was just a little girl. As Temple grew up, she stayed in touch with Hoover, and he became something like a behind-the-scenes helper during her later work in politics and as a diplomat. He even had people keep an eye on her, but more like a nosy uncle might watch out for a niece. People raised their eyebrows at this friendship, especially since Hoover was known for collecting dirt on famous people, not becoming their friend. And Temple, who later became a U.S. ambassador, was one of the few movie stars who moved into politics successfully. While there's nothing to suggest anything bad about their friendship, it's still very odd. A little girl famous for tap dancing and a man known for spying on people like Martin Luther King Jr.? It's the kind of strange connection that doesn't fit in any normal category and sits in the forgotten corners of Hollywood history. 4. James Stewart and Henry Fonda, a Republican and a Democrat. Walk into a workshop. James Stewart and Henry Fonda were best friends for over 50 years, and it confused just about everyone in Hollywood. Stewart was a quiet Republican who loved small-town America, while Fonda was a passionate Democrat who fought for social justice. They couldn't have been more different in their political beliefs, but they became friends long before politics became important to them. In the 1930s, they shared an apartment in New York while trying to become Broadway actors. They both loved making model airplanes and going fishing together. Even though they often argued about politics, sometimes very loudly, they always kept respect at the heart of their friendship. During the 1940s, both men served in World War II, and afterward both became very famous actors. They appeared in movies together like On Our Merry Way and How the West Was Won. But the real drama happened in their private talks. People said Fonda couldn't stand Stewart's political ideas, and Stewart thought Fonda's views were too extreme. But neither let that ruin their friendship. At a time when movie studios often created fake fights between stars, Stewart and Fonda showed that friendship could survive disagreement. In fact, it could grow stronger because of it. 5. Lucille Ball and Carole Lombard, the comedian and the queenmaker. Before Lucille Ball became America's favorite red-headed funny lady, she was just another actress working at RKO Studios. That's where she met Carole Lombard, the queen of silly comedies who was married to Clark Gable. Lombard was super famous, but instead of seeing Ball as someone to compete with, she took her under her wing like a big sister. They became friends because they both loved making people laugh, and Lombard taught Ball a lot about comedy timing and how to build her career. When Ball fell in love with Desi Arnaz, who many people thought was a risky choice for a husband, Lombard told her to follow her heart and not listen to others. Their friendship was kind, supportive, and unusual in a business built on jealousy. Sadly, Lombard died in a plane crash in 1942, but Ball never forgot her. Years later, Ball often said that Lombard helped her find her own funny voice as a performer. In a town where most friendships ended as soon as the cameras stopped rolling, this one made a lasting mark. Carole Lombard didn't just help Lucille Ball find her way in Hollywood. She helped create one of its biggest stars ever. 6. Tula Bankhead and Hattie McDaniel. Glamour meets grit. Tula Bankhead was a wild Broadway star known for her crazy lifestyle and sharp tongue. Hattie McDaniel was the groundbreaking actress who became the first black person to win an Oscar, but she faced constant unfair treatment and was often forced to play servant roles. On paper, they had nothing in common. Yet, these two became surprising friends in the 1930s. Bankhead, even though she was the daughter of a conservative Alabama politician, spoke out loudly for equal rights and often broke the rules about keeping white and black people separate. She publicly hugged and supported McDaniel in ways few white stars dared to do, inviting her to fancy parties and standing up for her against Hollywood's racism. Their friendship went against the unfair Jim Crow laws and what society expected, but it was real. McDaniel reportedly found Bankhead's honest, blunt way of talking refreshing, while Bankhead admired McDaniel's strength and sense of humor. They didn't hide their friendship, even when people criticized them for it. In a time when even being seen together could ruin a career, they stood side by side. It wasn't just unusual, it was revolutionary. 7. Bing Crosby and Louis Armstrong. Crooner meets innovator. Bing Crosby was the face of white popular music in the 1930s and 1940s. He had a smooth, clean voice that made him America's favorite singer. Louis Armstrong was totally different. He was a jazz pioneer, a black artist from New Orleans who changed American music forever with his rough voice and amazing trumpet playing. Yet these two very different men became true friends. Their friendship was special because it happened when black and white people rarely mixed socially. Crosby didn't just like Armstrong's talent, he actively helped him succeed. When many white performers were copying black musicians without giving them credit, Crosby made sure Armstrong got the attention he deserved. In 1936, Crosby insisted that Armstrong appear in his movie Pennies from Heaven. This made Armstrong one of the first black performers to have an important role in a mainstream musical. This was a huge deal back then. Crosby could have easily picked a white actor, but he wanted his friend to succeed. When they weren't filming, their friendship continued. They joked around, played music together, and ate meals as equals. They didn't let race divide them, which was very unusual then. Armstrong later said that Crosby treated me like a human being. Sadly, Armstrong couldn't say that about many people in Hollywood. Their friendship helped show America that black and white people could work together and be friends. Even though Hollywood was slow to change, these two men proved that friendship could cross color lines. For people who only saw their polished performances, this behind-the-scenes friendship was a powerful example of quiet progress and real connection. 8. William Haynes and Joan Crawford. Loyalty in a cutthroat town. William Haynes was one of the biggest movie stars of the late 1920s. He was handsome, charming, and had everything going for him. But there was one thing that made him different from other stars. He was openly gay at a time when that could destroy your career. Haynes refused to pretend to be someone he wasn't. When MGM studio bosses told him to marry a woman to hide his true self, he said no. That brave choice ended his acting career. MGM fired him in the early 1930s, and most of Hollywood turned their backs on him. But one friend never left his side, Joan Crawford. She was super famous when Haynes lost everything. While other stars avoided him, Crawford stood by him. She didn't care what people thought. Their friendship had started when they were both young actors at MGM, and she wasn't going to let anything change that. When Haynes started a new job as an interior decorator, Crawford became one of his first customers. She hired him to decorate her homes and told her famous friends to hire him too. She helped him build a successful new business when Hollywood wouldn't give him work anymore. Crawford called Haynes the only man I ever loved. Though they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, it was the deep love of true friendship. For decades, they ate dinner together, traveled together, and laughed like best friends. When Crawford's personal life fell apart through divorces and scandals, Haynes was always there for her. When some men beat up Haynes because they hated him for being gay, Crawford defended him publicly. This was dangerous for her career, but she didn't care. In a town obsessed with looking good and keeping a perfect reputation, these two friends chose honesty and loyalty over everything else. 9. Katherine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. Fire and Still Water. Katherine Hepburn was unlike any other woman in Hollywood. She was outspoken, wore pants instead of dresses, and didn't care about following Hollywood's rules for how women should act. Spencer Tracy was her complete opposite. He was quiet, very religious, and traditional. He was also married, though he and his wife had been living apart for years. When they met on the movie set of Woman of the Year in 1941, something special happened. These two very different people connected in a way that surprised everyone, including themselves. What followed was a friendship that lasted for decades. Some people said it was a love story, but it was much more complicated than that. Hepburn never married anyone. Even though she dated other men, she stayed devoted to Tracy. She cooked meals for him, took care of him when he got sick, and protected his good name. She was like a guardian angel, always watching out for him. Tracy trusted Hepburn more than anyone else in Hollywood. She knew exactly when to step forward to help him, and when to stay in the background to avoid causing problems. She understood him better than anyone. Their relationship wasn't like the fairy tale romances in movies. It was something quieter and much more real. Hepburn later said, "It was a special feeling I had for him. I would have done anything for him." They were perfect matches in the truest sense. When Tracy died in 1967, Hepburn made a hard choice. She didn't go to his funeral out of respect for his wife and family. She waited years before talking about him publicly. Their friendship was strange by Hollywood standards, but it was completely real and beautiful. 10. Humphrey Bogart and John Huston, brothers in rebellion. In Hollywood, actors and directors usually don't become close friends. There's often too much pride and competition between them. But Humphrey Bogart and John Huston were different. They became like brothers, breaking all the usual rules. Their friendship started in 1941, when Huston was a new director making The Maltese Falcon. He cast Bogart as the main character, which changed Bogart from just another tough guy actor into a true movie legend. What happened next was a partnership built on trust, taking artistic risks, and a shared love for adventure. Together, they made some of the greatest movies ever: The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Key Largo, and The African Queen. But they didn't just work together, they lived life together. They went hunting, got into bar fights, and had deep talks over glasses of whiskey late into the night. Huston pushed Bogart to become a better actor, and Bogart always gave amazing performances full of heart. They had complete trust in each other. On the set of The African Queen, filming conditions were terrible. There were mosquitoes everywhere, awful heat, and many people got sick. But Bogart stayed because Huston stayed. They had an unspoken agreement. No complaining, no big egos. Just focus on the work and support each other. When Bogart won his only Oscar award, it was for a movie directed by Huston. And when Bogart was dying of cancer in 1957, Huston was one of the last friends to visit him. Huston later said, "Bogart was more than a movie star. He was my compass." Even though they acted tough and macho, their friendship was rare and beautiful, built on loyalty, respect, and their love of making great art together. 11. Mae West and Cary Grant. The Bombshell and the Unknown. In 1932, Mae West was already a huge star. She was bold, confident, and didn't care what men thought about her. This was unusual for women back then. When Paramount Studios wanted to find a leading man for her movie She Done Him Wrong, they showed her a list of famous actors. Mae West pushed the list away and said something that became famous. "If he can talk, I'll take him." She was talking about Cary Grant, who almost nobody knew at the time. Most people had never heard of him, but Mae West saw something special in him. They had great chemistry in the movie, and audiences loved watching them together. But what really surprised Hollywood was the friendship that grew between them when the cameras weren't rolling. Mae West was 15 years older than Grant. She was known for being private and not keeping male friends around after movies were finished. But Grant was different from other men. He didn't try to compete with her or make her feel less important. Instead, he matched her cleverness perfectly. He was cool, charming, and wasn't threatened by her success. After their movie became a huge hit and launched Grant's career, he stayed close to Mae West. He visited her for years, long after he became famous himself. People in Hollywood gossiped about whether they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but both of them said no. What was real was their mutual respect and admiration. Mae West once said, "He was the only man who could keep up with me." In a town where friendships often ended when the cameras stopped rolling, their bond lasted. It was witty, unusual, and built on the fact that they genuinely liked and respected each other as people, not just as movie stars. 12 W.C. Fields and Baby Leroy. The grump and the toddler, W.C. Fields, built his comedy career playing a grumpy old man who hated children. So when movie studios decided to pair him with Baby Leroy, A cute little kid, in the early 1930s, audiences thought it would be funny. What they didn't expect was that Fields actually ended up liking the little boy. Behind the scenes, their on-screen fights were carefully planned by Fields himself. When baby Leroy spilled milk on him or took his cigars in the movies, Fields had planned every moment. He pretended they were enemies for laughs, and even joked that he had put gin in Leroy's baby bottle. But privately, Fields had nothing but good things to say about the little boy. He was amazed by Leroy's natural timing and comedy skills. Fields made sure the toddler was always safe on set and never got hurt during their silly scenes. This was surprising because Fields had a reputation for drinking too much and being mean to people. Their movie relationship was perfect comedy, the grumpy old man versus the innocent baby. Fans loved watching them together. Paramount Studios made several movies with them because they were so popular as a team. The really odd part was seeing Fields, who was known for being difficult and unfriendly, show such kindness toward a child. He once said that baby Leroy was the best actor I ever worked with. Coming from Fields, this was high praise indeed. Their friendship didn't last forever because Leroy quit acting when he was still young, but the few movies they made together are still funny today. What looked like a love-hate relationship on screen was actually mostly love behind the scenes. Fields had found an unlikely friend in the most innocent person imaginable.